The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Reverend Calvin Sauls. It is a joy to have all of you with us once again today as we prepare ourselves to tackle a very, very urgent, important, and challenging issue that's going on in our community. And so we're so glad that you're here with us. And today we will be having a thought-provoking solutions-oriented dialogue around suicide prevention and intervention in the black community. And so I have two dear friends and extraordinary individuals who are on the front lines around suicide prevention as well as mental wellness, and they're doing a lot of work in this area. And I've just had the privilege of working with them for the last couple of years. We've done several projects together, been part of several initiatives, and so I'm so glad that they were able to join us today for this very, very important conversation. Now, you might wonder why we're talking about, suicide prevention today. Well, we're doing so because this is Suicide Prevention Week. And so we wanted to make sure that as we talk about suicide and we deal with this challenge that affects so many people around the United States and indeed around the world. And so we wanted to just shine a spotlight on it to see if we can talk about some preventative strategies, explore some of the drivers, as well as looking at strategies for intervention. And so I'm glad today to have in the studio with us here at Faith Without Borders, Melita Johnson, who is the co-founder as well as the board president of the Elgin Foundation for Mental Wellness. So glad to have Melita here, and she'll share around the work that they are doing, as well as just her own experience, with suicide. So we're grateful for her presence here. And then we also have Dr. Lauren M. Walton with us. She's a board-certified psychiatrist, as well as the president of the let me see if I can get it correctly. The American Suicide Prevention Foundation. Did I get it right?
American Foundation for Suicide
There we go.
Prevention. Yes.
The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention here in Southern California. And so glad that she, is with us. All three of us are, individuals of faith. And so we will be coming at this, of course, from our personal experiences. We will be talking about this, from what we are doing professionally. But for the most part, it's going to be really how to make, what's happening around the challenge of suicide, how to really make it accessible, to so many people. What we're trying to say is we've got to move beyond stigmatization, because that's how we will get to compassion. And through compassion, that's the gateway to prevention. And so that's what's so important for us today to realize. We want to see how we can just move beyond the shame, of all of this, and to really see how we can provide support and solidarity to individuals affected by suicide. So let's get at it. I'm going to ask, we'll start with Melita, and I'm going to ask her, how did you, become such a strong advocate, around suicide prevention?
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Sauls, for having me today. And I'm just honored to share the stage with you, Dr. Lauren. The work that we're doing in helping to eliminate or reduce the rate of suicide is very important. So I'm just very grateful to be here on your show to talk about something that's very important to me and my family, and hopefully something that's very important to you as well. And so I founded the Elgin Foundation for Wellness because my brother, Elgin Stafford, died by suicide. And while it was devastating to me and to my family, especially because he was my best friend, he wasn't just my brother, and it was such a tremendous loss. Mm-hmm. And I knew I had to do something. I didn't know what that something was. It took several years, for it to come into fruition, because I was depressed, and I didn't know it. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of walk in a space of darkness, and you don't even know that you're walking in that space until I sought therapy. And then once I was able to step outside of the darkness, I knew I had to be a light, or if I could be a light for somebody else in their struggle with mental illness. And so we created this space where we can start to have healthy conversations about mental health and how we are all affected by mental illness. We all go through things, and that we should feel safe to have a space, or we should have safe spaces to talk freely, something that my family and I didn't feel like we had at the time. Like we didn't feel like it was safe to say, Elgin is struggling and we need help. Mm-hmm. And we need help right now, and what are, some of the things that we can do. But now, through the Elgin Foundation for Wellness, we hope to create safe spaces where we can have healthy conversations about mental health and how we can eliminate the stigma and just decrease awareness and just eradicate suicide altogether, if that is something that's possible. So that's what we hope to do with the Elgin Foundation for Wellness. As we continue to grow and to partner with, amazing human beings, we just hope to do more work, in the community and throughout the world.
Yeah. We'll hear more about some of the work that the Elgin Foundation is doing. But I know it was a journey, for you and your family, of realizing, when Elgin, couldn't be found. And then, how to talk about that, and how to kind of process that and work through it, working with law enforcement. And, of course, I know that, your assembly member, got involved as well. And that was wonderful. I mean, talk a little bit about, how, what was the breakthrough in terms of, really, look, something has gone awry here, and we need to figure out a way to come to terms with it, because once we're able to do that, even though it can be very, very painful, it can also be very, very empowering now to begin to ask, okay, what can we do about this around? Do you want to just talk a little bit about, the journey, the family, as because, the Elgin Foundation didn't take place overnight. I'm certainly aware of that. But there's a journey, and sometimes I think we skip over the journey, around that. So you wanna share a little bit about that?
Of course, thank you. So with the Elgin Foundation, it really should have begun while Elgin was alive, right? It should have begun because we had seen signs throughout his life that, maybe we didn't think it would lead to suicide, but it was something that we definitely should have spoken about as a family, so that we could figure out the best course of treatment. And so that's something that we should have begun beforehand, But really, what was the kicker for me was when Elgin had gone missing. So this is what happened. Elgin was talking to my parents on the evening of March 29th of 2012. Elgin was making phone calls to people. He called me at 11 o'clock sharp, March 19th. He called my brother. He called a lot of folks who he loved. And essentially he was saying bye. That's what I take from it, you know. I had this urge to say I love you, and I didn't. And that had, you know, that tore me up for years. You know, even still, like my family and I, we do not leave a space without saying, I love you. Love you, love you. And it almost seems kind of corny, but it's like, you're going to know that I love you, you know, and that came from that space. But Elgin, essentially, he was having a moment, and at 5:30 on March 20th, 5:30 in the morning, Elgin ran out of my parents' home, and like we never saw him again. Literally took off. He was jumping up and down. My mom was talking to him, and then he left. And they thought he had to go to the restroom, but then they heard the door open, and the alarm had sounded, and he had ran out of the home. And so they really don't even know what happened, whether he jumped into a body of water, but he was found in a body of water 10 days later. The fascinating part, and really the sad part about all of this, is that when Elgin had gone missing, my parents they contacted the police. And of course, they're doing their due diligence. He's a 23-year-old young man. You know, like, we're not going to go look for him. He's, you know, doing whatever. And I told my parents it was important to share with the police officers that he struggled with mental illness, and they said no. And so, I mean, and I get it, right? We weren't talking about it. We didn't have a healthy way to converse. And so they said no. So the police officers didn't take it seriously. And then, you know, I begged them to come back over. We had a conversation, and I said to the police officers, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, I have to say this. Elgin was experiencing mental distress, and I explained all the things. And my parents, if they could, it would have turned white in the face, like literally. But my dad is like my complexion, or not darker. My mom is like caramel. If they could turn white, they did, because, you know, it was the stigma, you know, around my son, Elgin Stafford, was struggling, and now the world knows. And then they put, you know, on the flyer that he was in mental distress, but then it was an urgent matter. They didn't wait the 24 hours, right? They started to do things, put things into place. Elgin was a congressional...
Because that was recognized.
Because that was recognized. But why couldn't we say that? You know, why? I felt fear saying that. I felt like somebody was going to, like, shame me or slap my wrist or something for saying Elgin was struggling, you know, and rightfully so. He had some really tough life challenges at the time. So, you know, all those things. And Elgin was missing, and I couldn't say, you know, right.
Yes.
I fear the worst. And, you know, but then they made it an urgent matter. You know, Elgin was a congressional intern for Karen Bass, so she was involved. Laura Richardson, our congressional officer, she was also involved. Like, so many people have become involved because Elgin was an amazing person. But we were, you know, I can't be afraid to say it now. Like, we were ashamed to say what was happening in his life, you know, and what was happening in our lives. And we couldn't talk about it openly. But hopefully now more folks through the foundation and through the work of AFSP will hopefully have a safer space where they feel okay talking about, you know, mental illness and what's really happening, and saying, you know what, I'm not okay. And that's okay, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's so. I mean, part of our time together to today is to see how we can ascertain some preventative strategies, but also, you know, in addition to prevention, also, you know, look at some intervention, you know, that can take place. And you've already, you know, pointed out, you know, several, you know, for us, you know. You know, if you see something, say something. You know, so the question becomes for me: how do we train our eyes to be able to recognize, so that we can see, you know, something, and then, you know, how do we then have the courage to say something? You know, and then who do we say it to? Exactly. You see, in terms of that, and then of course just the whole challenge, you know, around shame. You know, that then, you know, moves, you know, into secrecy, you know, and then from there it goes, you know, to so many different, you know, places. I wanna bring in Dr. Walton as a psychiatrist, you know, doing, you know, extraordinary work. You've received, you know, several awards. You belong to so many different associations, so you really have, you know, committed yourself to this work. But then also as, you know, the board president, you know, of, you know, the organization that's at the forefront, you know, in the United States, you know, around suicide, you know, advocacy, prevention, intervention, and all of that.
Yes.
You know, based on what you've heard from Melita, any thoughts that you have, you know, in terms of the work that you're doing?
I am honored to be here, and I'm so proud of you for speaking the truth and speaking your truth so honestly, because it's going to save lives. Reverend Sauls, it's an honor to be with you again, Melita again. And I am representing the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention as their board president. It's the greater LA chapter in the Central Coast. And just to have this opportunity in Morris Media to speak to people, you know, we believe that suicide can be preventable. And that's why we're here. And if you know warning signs, and if you can, they say that talk saves lives. And that's what stigma causes us to be silent.
Yes.
But if we can have opportunities like this to talk freely about what we are all experiencing, you know, suicide is so prevalent right now. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the nation. And for young people, 10 to 34, it's the second leading cause of death, nearing accidents. So this is touching everybody, you know. So the more we know, people perish for lack of knowledge. And I just am grateful that you're here to share, and I look forward to this conversation. So thank you.
I mean, you said, right, people perish for the lack of knowledge. That's one of my favorite scriptures. The other one that you kind of alluded to, you know, is truth. You know, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Amen.
You know, and so as, you know, three individuals, you know, that profess our faith, you know, in this case the Christian faith, you know, we've certainly allowed our faith to guide us, you know, as people who seek to be the light of the world, to travel into this journey of darkness, right? And to trust God enough to see how we can be with those who you know, feel like that they are surrounded by darkness, and as a result of that, the only light they see is to, you know, take their own life,
To escape.
to escape. You see it. So how do we, you know, allow, you know, our lights to shine, you know, in such a way that that we can be and become hope, you know, for them. That we can remind them that you know, it will get better. That we can, you know, say to them that, you know, love can lead you, you know, in a different direction. I know that, you know, you've experienced, you know, suicide in your family. You want to, you know, share a little bit about that?
Sure. You know, I got into this work. I'm a psychiatrist. It's the beginning of my 20th year as a psychiatrist, and I've been blessed to meet so many people and walk so many journeys and see healing. But more personally, I belonged to a congregation, Second Baptist, and there had been a death of a child, a grandchild, and nobody spoke of it. And one concerned parishioner said, "You know, aren't you a psychiatrist?" I said, "I am." He said, "Couldn't you do something?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so I began to go online and search, and I found the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I said, "You know what? Let's walk." So we're known for our walks. That's one of our ways for advocating and being present in the community. So we have a community walk called Out of the Darkness. I love the name.
I love that.
You know, because we all will travel through, and we want to get out of the darkness. And so together, we had 6 people strong in 2014. And I was just glad that 6 people came, but we've grown in the last several years to about 20 to 30 people, parishioners.
Yes.
So that's where I got involved in this. And it, you know, I have, in 20 years of psychiatry, I've had many patients who've been suicidal, many patients who have taken their lives. And so as someone who does this work, I have that. I have lost colleagues. If you really want to know, the profession that's at highest risk for suicide in this nation are U.S. physicians.
Wow.
U.S. physicians die at a higher rate by suicide than any other profession, 300 to 400 a year. So in my profession, I've lost colleagues. And then this summer, in July, I lost a cousin. July 12th, 21. Many risk factors. Sounds like an amazing person like your brother. And this is what happened, and this is how our family is now in the beginning of grief, going through. So I'm looking to you, now that I'm a family member, to see how you and your family have gotten through this. Because I know professionally there's one hat, and I know the statistics. It's another thing when you lose somebody that you've known since child. So that's where I am. But I honor her, Capri, and her life. And I pray that this conversation helps someone who struggled as she did to make a different choice.
That's just so powerful. Just for the sake of transparency, I have to share that even though as a pastor, we've the ministry that we've been involved in when I was at home in United Methodist Church has always been to make sure that we create a safe space, a free space, and an open space for to be able to respond to any and anything. And I've certainly made a commitment, through my ministry to end stigmatization in all of its forms. Whether it's around mental illness, whether it's around HIV and AIDS. And also around shame of any kind, but this experience really got tested. When on the evening of January the 1st, 2017, when I got home following our night watch or New Year's Eve. Service, and we had a great time. We normally, we had the jazz quartet played, and we had, awesome guests, sharing a wonderful meal. Just had a great time, and then, I received, a message from my brother Tony Sauls that his son and my nephew, Ashwin God Sauls, that he, took his life. And that was just a shock beyond, belief, and a pain that hit so deep that it was just unexplainable, around that. And so so that means, 2017 started for me on a very, very, very low, even though I just, had an awesome, worship, experience. And as, I was preparing for this, I, sent a note to, my brother and, and family, as well as all of, Ashwin's cousins, because certainly they were affected, by this. And again, just like Capri, and just like, Elgin, he just had he was just full of life. And if he was still with us, he would probably be here in Los Angeles, studying acting, because that was, what he and his dad talked about, for him to do as part of his, passion, around that. And so that's how my life basically now intersected in a real way, with the experience of suicide, and because of my faith, I made an intentional decision to talk about this, and so an announcement was sent out, to the congregation. I couldn't get myself together to preach that particular Sunday. Instead, started getting myself ready to head to South Africa, to go and be, with the family. And what was so powerful was the Saturday before I left, we normally would have a breakfast, at our home for all the men, who would be part of the men's ministry, just to kick off the year with the breakfast. We didn't cancel that, and I'm glad we didn't cancel it, because it was just powerful to be surrounded by men. And during our time then, I then made the decision to share with them what was going on. Really, I think, just to start my own healing and to kind of deal with my own grief, but then, didn't realize, how powerful it was to just talk about it, to just share what was going on. And then upon my return, my first 2 or 3 sermons, was entitled "When the Unthinkable Happens," and I then preached, on this to the congregation, and that then started off our ministry, at the church around suicide prevention, because the minute I spoke about this openly, from the pulpit, several members, such as Melita and her family, then came forth and said, we've had that experience too, after that we then began to seek out opportunities and ways, to participate. And one of the things that we then did was we went and joined the walk, right? The Out of Darkness walk. Put a team together from the church and went and walked, and we thought we were going to be the only black folk, there. And it was just so powerful and beautiful and hopeful when we ran into, folk from Second Baptist Church, and we ran into folk from Trinity Baptist Church, 2 other congregations that we have, a relationship with, and that's how we connected then with Lauren, and so we just then, as a pastor, I just, again, continue to be very, very intentional. And so the second week of September, when I was still at home with United Methodist Church, we had a suicide prevention awareness weekend, with an event that Friday night, that Saturday morning, an empowerment session, and then on Sunday, both of our worship celebrations, would then touch, on the issue of suicide prevention. And part of it is because, ain't nothing we can hide from God. Hence the name of our show, Faith Without Borders, because we serve a God without borders. There's no border in your personal life, in your professional life, in your community life. There is just no border that you can, draw between you and God, because after all, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so as we're sitting here, continuing, to grow through our grief, my brother's last message to me, through WhatsApp, after I shared some encouraging words to him, was, I miss him so much, and so I'm sure we can say the same about Elgin, we can say the same about Capri, and I know so many other people can continue, to say, the same about it. And so that's why we wanted to, talk about this, and we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to get into how it is that you can get involved. I'm going to ask, Dr. Walton to give us, some strategies. As a psychiatrist, we're going to talk about what resources the foundation has, both, the Suicide Prevention Foundation as well as, the Elgin Foundation, so that we can, on the the second part of the show today, just give you some resources, some strategies, some ideas. But we know that the faith community, has to step up, around these difficult and challenging, issues that people are facing, and to see, how with God's help, we can certainly be, the headlight in all of these issues and not the tail light, around just, always being last to get on board, always being last to get the point. I'm glad I serve a God that is progressive. And
Amen.
That's not a political ideology. That's just who God is, always moving us, progressively forward into the future. So we're going to take a short break, and then when we get back, we're going to get into, some strategies, some as well as some resources, as we continue, with Faith Without Borders. Our topic today, prevention and intervention strategies around suicide in the Black community. We'll be right back. Welcome back again to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Reverend Calvin Sauls. Today, as I mentioned earlier on, we are talking about suicide prevention. We're looking at prevention as well as intervention strategies especially in the black community. And glad to have here with us Melita Johnson from the Elgin Foundation for Mental Wellness, as well as board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Lauren M. Walton. So glad to have you here. We wanted to spend, the rest of our time being solutionary, in terms of, how do we, on the one hand, break through, the stigma? How do we, challenge, the shame? How can we move towards compassion, towards prevention, as well as intervention? So, Dr. Lauren, do you want to share, just, some thoughts,
Sure.
Of some resources that the foundation has, or that you, as a psychiatrist, can offer for us?
Absolutely. The foundation was founded in 1987, basically in research. A small group of concerned people to get more information on, what can we do at that point. And then that translated to education and advocacy. So AFSP.org, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.org, has wonderful resources. We're the Greater Los Angeles and Central Coast chapter. That will bring us to more local resources. And we have a survivor group called Solace, Survivors of Suicide Loss. Support, hope, listen, talk, comfort, heal. Solace. It's a weekly drop-in group for those who have lost folks by suicide. And it's run by two of our board members who are excellent. It's at Venice Church from 2 to 3:30 p.m. And if you go to Solace, SOLACE, 4SAS at gmail.com, you can register and get more information. So Solace, SOLACE, 4, the number 4, SAS at gmail.com. You can get more information. So that's something we have locally. If you have lost someone and you are looking for a place to go, that's one place. If you're struggling. The wonderful thing about the foundation is we deal with folks who have lived experience. Because depression, 90% of people who die by suicide are suffering from a mental illness. But not all people take their lives. So there are people who are struggling in silence that need treatment. So we have a lot of resources in terms of education on therapy, on medication, and what is effective medication and what is effective treatment in the community. So I know they'll be scrolling some resources for people. Therapy works. In our community, we have a stigma about talking about things and openly expressing ourselves. We will suffer in silence if we don't. I'm a witness. And not everybody comes to an addiction psychiatrist. I'm a super specialist. People start with their primary care doctor or the nurse practitioner. Excuse me. Anyone who is in the helping profession, you can go and say, I am struggling. That's the first step, is just to acknowledge. Without insight, there's no help. So you just have to know that something is wrong. If you're having a suicidal thought, that's not normal. Suicidal ideation is like a fever. It's non-specific, but it means that there's something to look for. So I tell people, and people of faith feel that, you can't have biological illness and faith. They coexist. That's why physicians exist. You take your hypertension meds and you go off to church. You take your bipolar meds or depression medications, you go off to church. And it should be just like that. So our reality is not there yet, but my hope is we will get there. And we'll be a healthier population for it.
Yeah, and the key thing to know is that, we are not alone. And that is why it is so essential for us to, I cannot underscore this enough, that faith communities, we have to become, places of safety. We have to become places where people, will their humanity and their dignity, will be affirmed. That is just so essential, around that. So when we have these support groups, it is critical that we do have, confidentiality, that we do have, an opportunity where a person will feel like, as I, share around this, that, it's not going to become part of the announcements, next week, or, a part of the gossip line at the church, instead of the gospel line, right? that we should all be on, in terms of that. So we cannot underscore, the critical aspect that communities of faith can be places of healing, places of wholeness, in terms of that. Tell us a little bit about the walk.
Oh, sure.
That's coming up, because again, that's just a very, very non-threatening way, to get a person involved.
Absolutely.
And to have a team, and it is a powerful experience.
It is.
This walk. So tell us a little bit about it, and maybe give us the dates for the Southern California ones.
Absolutely. We actually have a walk this Sunday, September 8th in Santa Barbara. So anybody in Santa Barbara, there's a walk there, afsp.org, Santa Barbara. Our walk that we have joined in has been the Santa Monica Walk on Santa Monica Pier. It's going to be October 19th this year. And then we have a walk in Pasadena. It's going to be November 2nd. afsp.org/walk, and then you just scroll down to the walk that's going to fit your team and where you are. The walk is free. Sponsorship is great, but the walk is free. So we walk together in solidarity and in honoring those who we lost and honoring those who have lived experience and are there. It's good to be there and to share in the hope that education and advocacy can bring. So I'm so glad you guys are part of the community.
Yes.
It's amazing.
When we went to our first one, it was just powerful, and I'm looking forward to being part of one of those two this year.
It's not somber. It may be heavy at times as you reflect on people, but it is dog friendly. It is child and stroller friendly. People come and have a shared understanding of the struggle. And that in itself gives hope, because you see masses of people on one accord. From all faiths, all walks, all genders, everything is there. And it's great. So.
And the walk itself is a strategy for prevention and intervention, because that's how it goes down, and it's just awesome around that. Let's talk a little bit about the Elgin, Foundation for Mental Wellness. Some of the resources that you have. I know we just had a golf tournament, so you may want to say a little bit about the golf tournament, and just some of the other upcoming events that you have, as well as resources.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll talk a little bit about the golf tournament and the wellness symposium. So we had on August 24th a wellness symposium, an awards breakfast, and a golf tournament at Los Verdes Golf Course. And so in this space, we invite people to come and talk and share their experiences about mental health and just different things. So this year we had two speakers. We had a doctor who had come in to talk about the physician aspect of being treated, knowing the signs, knowing when to seek help through medications. Like, medications aren't bad. Like, there's a stigma against taking medications and how to take medications. And then we also had former NBA player and coach Earl Watson, and he spoke about his journey with mental health. He also spoke about his best friend dying last year by suicide. He had taken his own life, and so he shared, the fact that he's human. A lot of the times we don't see super athletes, we don't see superstars as actual human beings. And he humanized his experience, which was so powerful. Folks stayed behind. You see people of color talking about their journeys through life with mental illness, family members with mental illness, and it was so powerful. And so that was our third annual event. We had hundreds of folks come out, and then we celebrate the young folks who have the courage to talk about their journeys through mental health, and also those who want to seek paths, career paths in mental health. And so we celebrate them by, giving them small awards, through our sponsorships. One of our largest
Well, they got
sponsors.
scholarships.
They got scholarships. We were able
it wasn't
to
no
provide
small
scholarships,
award, y'all.
right? We gave scholarships, right? So we're like, hey, let's have these conversations. It's okay to talk. And you should have, these were some amazing human beings, these young people, and they are aware. They see what's happening, and they know they have to talk about it. They are dope. They are so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited about the future with these folks like leading the way. And then after that, we had a golf tournament. So you can, really let go and release, right, as you play golf in Palos Verdes, overlooking
the Pacific
Ocean. It was so amazing. But this is what, I'm like, man, if Elgin if you could have been here to see this. Like, we are talking about stuff that we didn't feel like we could talk about openly. Like, Elgin and I spoke. I didn't know that him and my mom were speaking about something else, and him and his friends were talking, but in silos we were talking, and nobody, like, we're all in one space talking about this. Like, come on, man. The conversations, the safe spaces, the listening without judgment, that is so key. It's so important to be there and to hear and to understand. And if you have the resources, to use them. You may see scrolling on the bottom certain resources. We lean on the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I lean on the American, I sometimes call Anne Marie and we have 2-hour conversations, and I'm like crying, like, oh, I don't understand. But the fact that somebody is there to listen and to partner, and you know what I mean, without judgment, without pretense, just operating from a space of love. And non-judgment is key. So my mom is going to kill me because today I did not wear an Elgin Foundation for Wellness shirt. I wore a shirt that says the future is love.
All right now.
Right. I believe in operating from a space of love and compassion, and really just seeing the human in all of us. We all go through the American Foundation for Mental Illness. We lean on the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So there's so many resources that I didn't know about that we share openly, with our community. I've had so many calls, about what do I do? I'm like, here are some resources. Here, the fact that they're calling, we can talk about it. One additional powerful message I have is my daughter. Jayla. So number one, I have 3 children. They're all amazing, but and we can talk about suicide openly. There was I'll talk about 2 different things just really quickly. Logic came out with a song on his journey through suicide ideation. So there's this hip-hop artist named Logic. I know you know. And so, he talked about his journey. And literally he came out with this song on the very first day, like the eve, I guess it was like some kind of award. I think it was the MTV Awards or one of these large award shows. And we had just wrapped up our very first Elgin Foundation event. And I came home and they said, oh my God, you would never believe Logic came out with his, a song about his journey through suicide ideation. So we're in the car one day and I'm taking my 3 children to school. And my youngest son, Jacob, is 5 or 6. And he goes, I don't want to die. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you don't want to die? I don't want you to die. So he was like, the man is talking about he want to die. And I said, wait, what? And I thought, oh goodness, that's the song. So of course I'm sweating. Like, how do I have this conversation, right? So I said, you know what? Let's just listen. So I decide to listen to the whole song with the children, and you literally hear his whole journey, and it's so powerful. Like through, I don't want to die. Oh wait, there may be resources. I want to live. Like those are his, that was his journey. And so I asked the children, like, so what do you think about that song? And they told me, like, well, of course, Jacob, he's very outspoken. I don't want to die. And I said that, okay, good. I said, fine. But then I asked the other children, I said, have you ever considered or have you ever had thoughts of dying?
Did you go?
Yeah, I was like, and then, my son answered first, like, no. And then my daughter was like, no. And then we talked about, like, if you do ever have those thoughts, what do you think? Like, do you feel like it would be safe to talk to me, or to, like, do you feel like it would be a safe place or a safe person that you could talk to? Like, Mom, we always talk. And they just kind of like brush it over. I'm like, no, for real. Like, let's talk. But this is literally a conversation that we had, a 15-minute conversation we had on the way to school one day, right? So I'm like, okay, we've had the conversation, because I kept thinking, how can we talk about suicide? And it literally, he gave us a space to talk. Like, thank you, Logic, for the space that you created for me to speak with my children. But then later on in that year, it was just so powerful and it's heartbreaking at the same time. So my daughter, while she was in the 7th grade, a young lady had approached her at her school, and she didn't really know her well, but the girl was crying profuse. She was crying, and Jalen said, well, what's wrong, or what's happening? And she was like, I don't want to talk about it. And Jalen said, well, you can talk to me. And she was like, I don't know if I can talk about it. And Jalen said, just talk. I mean, she was crying a lot. And so the girl said, I want to die. And Jalen asked her, like, what's happening? What's going on in your life that makes you, have these feelings? And the girl was like, my father left, and, sort of all these different things that were coming up in her 7th grade world, right? And so Jalen asked her, well, do you have a plan? She said, do you know what you would do if you would take your life? And the girl said, well, yeah, I've been cutting. And she showed Jalen her wrist. She had been cutting to cope with the pain. Sure. She said, my dad left his gun. I could shoot myself, or I could jump from some bridge. Like, she had thought about this. She had wanted to do this on a certain date. So she had planned this. So Jalen immediately called me and was like, Mommy, this person at my school is considering taking her life. And I said, let's go to your principal. Go to your principal. I will call your principal too. Go to your principal. Let's figure out something. But the fact that Jalen, number one, didn't judge her. She listened to her. I mean, of course she's around me and my suicide prevention talk. But the fact that now unfortunately, Elgin passed, right? Through Elgin's passing, I've acquired all this information, have been able to take and provide trainings throughout the community. And then now we can say, okay, this is happening. You may have a plan. How can we help, right? So they called the PET team. The PET team was like, thank you for your help. They took her to a local hospital. She was high risk. That parent called Jalen. And the parent cried and thanked Jalen for saving her daughter's life. And I thought, what the heck just happened here, And I think it's that conversation. Being open.
Absolutely. She knew what to do.
She knew what to do. And literally from listening to us, because we were meeting at my home. Our board meetings began in my living room, literally. And I'm thinking, you're supposed to be doing your homework. She is like...
But that's exactly
right.
Yeah. That is exactly the message. True. I looked at this study, and this might blow your mind. So in 2017, there was a youth risk behavioral survey. 7.4% of youth grades 9 through 12 report that they made at least one suicide attempt in the last 12 months.
Wow.
Females attempted 2 times as often as males, 9.3% versus 5%. Black students reported the highest rate of attempts at 9.8%, while white students attempted 6.1%. And of those that needed medical attention, the black students needed medical attention more often because their suicide was more lethal. Their attempts were more lethal. And this is a CDC finding.
Wow.
So this is the age we need to start with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Truly, it's younger and younger and younger, and that's a whole other conversation about what children are experiencing now that we didn't 20 and 30 and 40 years ago.
It is unreal.
But being a lifesaver is about having the conversation.
Yeah.
Saying, I'm a safe person. How long have you been thinking about this, and do you have a plan? And if you have a plan, we need to call for somebody for help.
Yeah.
That's it. She's got it.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah, that's
great job.
It was her. But it was, it's through the talk. It's through this happened, and now is there something we can, yes, there's something we can do about it. Let's do something about it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask, Laurent to wear the image at the beginning of the show, for him to put that back up, this is a campaign that's been going on around, the city and county, I believe, of Los Angeles, and especially at the airport, where they just have, these images that I think I sent it to you guys.
Yes.
But that's that's the one, and there's a hashtag that goes with it. There's a second one, Laurent, if you want to put that one on. And this is the one that actually caught my attention.
Yes.
You see, when I was just walking around at the mall, and I was like, what is this about? Around it. But again, it is a safe port of entry. You see,
Right.
For anybody to for us to realize that hey, we all go through something.
Yeah.
So because of that, how can we provide safe and free spaces for folk, to be able to rise above, what they are going through, around this. Laurent is going to put up, some other resources, some numbers, and some organizations that we want for you to be aware of. There you have the Elgin Foundation for Wellness. You have their information, and again, this is a key number. 800-273-8255 is the suicide prevention lifeline, and some other pieces that he'll put up for you to be aware of, around this. We're gonna go a little over because I just want to give the two of you just the opportunity, maybe just to to share some final thoughts, around just again some preventative measures. I know for you, Lauren, Capri, took a life, I think, by way of a gun.
Yes.
So you may want to just share a little bit about,
Absolutely.
that whole piece, because that's right now just as far as I'm concerned, a health, crisis.
A public health crisis.
Public
Sure.
health
Gun
crisis.
safety is what we talk about. And, 50% of people who take their lives, and I'm really just so impressed with the way you talk about suicide. The way that we talk about suicide, people don't commit suicide, and it's not a successful, it's they die by or they take their lives. And 50% of people who die by suicide do so by lethal means, by firearm. So what we say at AFSP is sometimes just removing that as an opportunity for people saves lives. Folks don't tend to choose another. They have a specific plan, and they don't tend to change. So if that gun is not available, that's not going to be the way that they take their lives. So people need to know that. It's not about a right or not a right, but if you know that somebody's struggling and they're thinking about harming themselves, you want to make sure that their environment is safe. And that's something that we can do.
Yes.
We can't make the choice of them to live or not, but we can protect an environment for people. Very, very helpful. Also, preventative things. People who are connected do better. So I'm glad that you have this safe space and this foundation. People who are connected to other people, one of the major risk factors for suicide is feeling alone. Feeling alone, feeling emotional pain, and feeling disconnected. And if we can do things as a society to not have people isolated and then get the education, we are so far ahead of the game. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity. AFSP has been a lifesaver. We continue to strive to make this community safer and more informed and provide hope to those. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Melita, any final words that you have that you want to share?
Yes, I'm just going to borrow from AFSP their hashtag Talk Save Lives. Talk Saves Lives, and it's so important because what we've seen through the various conversations and connecting with various communities is that indeed talk saves lives. So having healthy conversations about mental illness, about mental health, about physical health, staying connected with your community, with those you love, those who love you, it matters. Also, I I do yoga, so I'm just going to put that out there. Do yoga as as a way, as a means for me to remain healthy mentally. And so the Elgin Foundation for Wellness has partnered with a good friend of mine. We've created a space called the Hip Hop Asanas, because a lot of the times people of color are like, yoga, oh my God. And so we're creating a space where we can actually connect with each other and find joy and peace out of movements, physical movements, so that we can, become more flexible, not just in our limbs, but in our minds as well, right? And so we're hosting an event on September 21st, which is the International Day of Peace, and it's called Yoga for Peace, and we're doing it right in the community at Horace Mann UCLA Community School. Yeah, and so we're just inviting everyone to come out and to practice with us and just be with one another and love on each other, and just know that we're in a safe space where we can move freely, and there's no judgment and there's no competition. Nobody's like, you're the best yogi or the worst. We're just coming to practice and praise and love on each other. So please go to www.theelginfoundation.org. That's www.theelginfoundation.org for more information. Thank you so much for having me.
I can vouch for yoga, so it's not yoga. It's great.
Space.
And Denise Davidson, I participate in her class whenever I can, get there. But boy, I know it's a struggle to get there.
Sure.
But boy, after that class, I feel I've released. I feel I can touch the sky.
Exactly.
Lord have mercy. So,
and I'll see you at the walks.
Yes,
right?
We'll
The walks.
be there.
October
walks.
19th, Santa Monica.
Yes. And the Elgin Foundation for Wellness will have a strong team at the walk. So, yes, we will be
Second
there.
Baptist
I'll probably
will
be
be
a part of that team. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we want to talk about, at some point how to get a solace group. I know that one is in Venice that you mentioned.
It
right?
is.
So we'll talk about, how to get one, and maybe somewhere in South LA.
Absolutely.
How to do your yoga pieces. I know you in Torrance.
Carson. But we're in the South Bay. But I have a car. I'm everywhere.
Yeah, she is. She's so that we can, I think my focus area is global, but I connect that global community with my local community, which is South Los Angeles, and of course try to connect it all with what's happening in South Johannesburg, where I'm from. So we're trying to just kind of connect these dots and build these bridges. Around
we do education, free education, so we'll get a group in our community.
Yeah. So again, this was just a powerful experience. Learned so much. We hope that it was very, very resourceful. To you, as we deal with this huge challenge, around suicide. We know that it is preventable. We are all about how do we empower people and enlighten people to move beyond stigma to support and solidarity, and then also, as people of faith, the question is always asked, when a person, transition, by suicide, what's going to happen with them? Are they going to heaven? Are they going to hell? We have all these questions, and my response to that is, around issues of heaven and hell, that's up to God. It ain't up to us. I'm hoping to get there one day, someday, wherever it is. In terms of that, but I think, when I prepared myself for the eulogy of Ashley God Sauls, and again preaching on that sermon when the unthinkable happens, what was so powerful for me was the fact that I wanted to emphasize how he lived, not how he departed from this life, and that was very, very meaningful to me and to all of us, to see how we can move, towards the light. So thank you for joining us. Again, this was just an extraordinary experience. I want to thank, Dr. Lauren M. Walton for being here. I want to thank Melita Johnson for being here. And we know that because of how this has affected our lives, we will continue to be on the front lines, with you. You're not alone, and you belong. And if at all possible, know that you belong to us as we continue to do the work that we do. This has been Faith Without Borders. Always a privilege to be your host, Reverend Calvin Sauls. Take care and continue to stay in the light.